the society as a whole is not really being tech savvy enough for all of these things. Now we are bombarded with Bitcoin and all of that. Ask this normal person who is investing in it like heavily, like what is the underlying technology? And they have no clue.
So do you even care about privacy? Because I mean, I don't necessarily care about it. My passwords are not the safest because I've never been hacked or lost any data to lack of security. But at some point I might, and then I would regret it not being safe enough.
Well, I would say that in general, you have to know the domain that you are working with. You need to know that there are things that you need to take care of with extra caution, and there are things that you don't. To me personally, if I were to design solutions for myself, I would go the safer way. Like, because I don't mind it. I have like Keybase on my computer. Like, no one has Keybase on their computer, right? I have my own public key that is available to everyone, and I go on and, for example, go on my GitHub account and say that here, this is my public key. So they know now that if they trust my GitHub, because this is always a problem, like you see a public key on the internet, Roham is saying that this public key is mine. How do you know? How do you know that it's Roham who's saying that this public key is mine? You know? So like even the initial connection might never be the case. It's like if you never see that person in real life and he doesn't hand in the public key to you, like how do you know that this is the person who gave you the public key? Like end-to-end encrypted messaging. Sounds good. But how you know that WhatsApp is not having like a middleman in between? Like you are end-to-end encrypted with this middleman, and that middleman is end-to-end encrypted with like someone else. How do you know that?
Do you think they do?
No, I'm not saying that they do.
Okay.
I'm just saying that like, just to show you like the problems with it. So there is always this problem. Like for example, the way that Signals is trying to solve it is that when you meet your friend, you can, for example, I don't know, like they have like this QR. I'm not using Signal personally. So what I've seen is they have this QR code, and then like you can scan your friend's QR code. Like the way that Telegram does it, probably you've seen when you are maybe in a secret chat or when you are voice calling with someone. Like it shows like 4 emojis. And so you can, for example, confirm that those 4 emojis are the same on both devices. This is like kind of the key you're using in order to communicate. Now, again, all of that said, it is still not like a 100% thing. The thing is, first let me like give some sort of introduction, maybe not only to you, but for everyone who will later listen to this. So, like how private public key works in general. Before private key public key was a thing, before this asymmetric cryptography was a thing, we were using symmetric cryptography. And symmetric cryptography uses like one key specifically. And this makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. For example, like the very simple encryption that like everyone can use is something like a Caesar cipher. So what is a Caesar cipher? A Caesar cipher is, say that you have a text. So it's like, hello, my name is Hossein, etc., etc. And you just like choose a number, usually like from like 0 to 25. And then you just shift cyclically. Is that a word? You do like a cycle shift on each one of those letters. So say if your key is 3, when you see the letter A, you go B, C, D. So instead of A, you put D. The very dumb way of like encrypting something, quote unquote. So of course it's very bad because there are only 26 different possibilities. And like when you do it, like when you just scan it even with your eyes, you can kind of see like what is the message. If you know that this is kind of the encryption that is being used here. The other problem, even if it was hard to guess everything, say that there is like another algorithm that has like many more possibilities. Once you have that key, you can just revert it back, right? Like once you have 3, immediately you can just go 3 back. So these kind of encryptions are called symmetric because there is a symmetry here. You encrypt with the same key, and when you go back, you kind of decrypt with the same key. So the encrypted and decrypted, they kind of use the same algorithm here. But asymmetric cryptography, which is kind of the basis of everything, including the safe web and all of that, that is when you are generating the key for yourself. You're not only getting one key and you're sharing that key. No, you're getting 2 keys. You get a private key and you get a public key. When you get you can use that private key to, for example, encrypt stuff. But the thing is, you don't have to share it with anyone, as the name suggests. You never share it with anyone. You only share the public key with other people. And the good thing is, if someone wants to encrypt something and send it to you, they can use your public key and say, "Hi, Roham, here is my secret information. Colon, secret information." Get that text file, get your public key, and then encrypt it into a encrypted message. So now it's like 1x04 and whatever. They send this over internet to you. You use your private key to decrypt that. That's kind of the genius of this. So you pass in your public key. They use your public key with their text to encrypt it. You pass it over the internet or whatever, over the phone, however you want to pass it. Since you have private key of Roham, you will be able to decrypt it.
So there are 4 keys involved here.
There are only 2. So there's a public key and a private key.
No, but between the 2 of us, if we're texting, in total there are 4.
Yeah. Okay. So each one of you have a public key and a private key. Private key you never share, and public key, like there can be like 100,000 people in the world who have your public key. The thing that they can do with your public key is to encrypt stuff with it. Okay, that's great. They can encrypt stuff with it that they know that only you and only you can read. Because you have the private key paired with that specific public key.
Okay.
So like I say hello, I have your public key, I turn it into something, someone else says hi, we both send it over the line, you use your private key to decipher them. If someone in the middle of the line intercepts and sees my message, they see 10AX, whatever, right? Like
just random.
It's just like random bits.
And how hard is it to decrypt?
It's pretty difficult. I mean, depending on like what encryption you use, how many bits of like what is your entropy of all of this randomness and all of that. It is obviously very difficult. And every couple of years they say, oh well, we are not going to use this anymore. This is considered to be vulnerable. For example, oh, we found this vulnerability, or our computation power is now at a point that we can kind of decipher this. So they go to the next step. So it's always like this race against the times and the hackers and like whatever. But that's usually the way that the security goes forward. And now all of these things, you are a person with a podcast and like all of that. You on a day-to-day basis, you are using the computer like every single day. You go to all of these websites. All of these websites have like a HTTPS. This stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. And the S in it basically says that let's have a secure handshake between we even start to talk to each other, between you and the server. So basically what you do is that you kind of transfer your public keys in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you want to, so if you want to send something, you use the server's public key. Whenever the server wants to send you something, the server uses your public key. And since you have the private key, obviously you can, like, after this exchange, you will be fine. Now, this is kind of a slow algorithm in general, like to encrypt and decrypt every single time. So what you usually do is that in this handshake, you actually pass in a symmetric key from the symmetric cryptography, which is faster. But you pass that in encrypted. So you pass that symmetric key itself encrypted. So when you pass that, then you know that, like, even if someone intercepts in the middle, they couldn't find the actual symmetric key. They just found some nonsense. Now you can send back and forth between the server the stuff that is encrypted with the symmetric key. So this is faster for you to surf the web and all of that. What I'm getting at with all of this information is that maybe some would argue that these are some of the stuff that should be taught at the school. Some of the schools are teaching this. The society as a whole is not really being, like, tech savvy enough for all of these things. Now we are bombarded with Bitcoin and all of that. Ask this normal person who is investing in it, like, heavily, like, what is the underlying technology?
Mm-hmm.
And they have no clue. And I think this is a problem. This is a big problem because, like, you should know what you believe in. If this would be anything else, people would be mad about it. Like, oh, why people are, like, following this, like, herd?
Why did we follow the herd and buy GME?
Right. But the thing is, well, that was just for memes. For me personally, that was just like, okay, I don't care.
Same.
Yeah. But, and I'm not, like, trying to, like, be kind of, like, trying to be, like, elite and say, oh, like, no one can buy Bitcoin unless they took, like, classes in cryptography and computer science. If you don't know the basics of blockchain. No, I'm not saying that. Like, you could be using a technology and not understand the underlying things of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100% true. Like, so you may, I don't know anything about, like, a car, you know. It's not like I'm never, like, driving, or of course I'm never driving, but because I don't have a driving license. But say I'm never, like, getting in a car. Maybe I take a taxi, right? The problem is where you kind of, like, defend a technology. You go on you try to make this really prevalent without this underlying education. And then when you try to force it upon people without proper education, the thing about this is that even if you don't know how this whole thing is being created, even if you don't know that, you should at least know how to operate it. I mean, society has already figured out by now that it's not a good idea, probably, for people to not know how to drive and, like, just figure it out.
Or to know how to drive and still drive, because it's fucking dangerous. But
yeah, but they already kind of figured this out.
Mm-hmm.
So now the thing that is happening is that, well, okay, we have to take driving lessons, we have to know the rules, and then we can finally drive. But, like, there's nothing even remotely close to this when it comes to technology. So you end up with people who really don't know what they're doing. And you get a lot of problems because, oh, you lose your private key. Bro, no one can get your private key back to you. That was the entire point, right? Like, that was the whole security point. But, like, the normal person doesn't care about the security point. The normal person loses their damn private key. Right? So for normal things, Don't use these stuff. Don't be like super hard. I'm just annoyed because of this renewal, to be honest. Like this is the reason of my rants. But this got me really thinking. Like, do a lot of these operations need this level of security, or could they just be like now? How many billion people are on Facebook? Like 1.5 billion people? I don't know. These many people are on Facebook. Like, what is their security? Their security is a password. Like, best case scenario, they have like 2-factor authentication. But that's their security. And that's your security like everywhere. That's your security in Gmail, and that's your security everywhere. Like, why can't it be security for some of your stuff in government? Why can't you have an account in government where you can easily do some of the things that you need to do, pay your taxes, etc., using just that account?
Have you ever used the government ad or website?
And
they're from like 25 years ago. They're like version 1.
But that's the problem with the legacy systems that they have. So they can't possibly, with all of the infrastructure that they have, to like keep up.
But I would say it's also partially because engineers are not inspired to work for governments. Like, why would I?
It's not about the fact that the engineers are not inspired by it. It's that's the fact that they are kind of like blocked, and it's a hassle. It's a big hassle. It's like, personally speaking, what like, okay, you're an engineer, and you have this like amazing idea. Like, it's so difficult to get through the bureaucratic hurdle of doing something that you just end up not doing it. You just end up like totally not doing it. So that's the idea here. Engineers might be inspired by it, but it's so difficult to go about the change. Versus like privately, you can like be the change that you want to see in the world. You can, like, tomorrow I can just start a repo online. Like, to me, making, like, if I'm not happy with the technology, and if enough people are not happy with the technology, I just create a repo. I start my own definition of what makes me happy. And then if enough people also like this, it gets stars on GitHub, and then people start to use it in their apps and in production. People start to, so that's kind of like the power of open source. It's also the power of just having a company, right? You can just get some people who are excited about this new thing, and if you excite enough people, they will buy your thing or subscribe to it or whatever, and then you make that change in the industry. But that's not happening in government, because like, you can't make this alternative and then make government compete with it. You have to like get them to agree with whatever, which is not like a bad thing, but it's just it's not a bad thing per se. Like, they have to obviously have some control over stuff, but it's unfortunately a consequence of being a government and not a free thing. Like, it comes with this. It has its good and it has its bad. One of its bad is that when you have control over things, then innovation kind of suffers. And this is not, by the way, the problem of governments only. For example, this happens in Microsoft, right? Like, when you have a big, giant company, now you can't be the agile startup anymore. And that's why companies are like building startups within the company to try to kind of tackle this. Like, what Google is doing, like, people look at Google and say, oh, well, this is a terrible company. What they do is to get money from the ad revenue of their search engine, and they like make these terrible projects that they die after like 5 years max. Yeah. But this is the surface level. The thing is, what Google is actually doing is they are building this environment for their engineers to compete. It's kind of like, you might fail. We might shut it down because the market decides.
Yeah, who gives a fuck? It's just
Who
it
cares?
might work and become
Who
Gmail.
cares? Exactly. This is not something that, for example, Apple does. So Apple doesn't like say, oh, well, we will have a team and we will just work on a like product. You can work on a product, and if you weren't successful, we'll just like shut it down. It's all right. I don't care.
They also don't collect that much data, so they're much slower in comparison.
It's not about data really.
Oh, come on.
It's not really about data. It's about the fact that culturally they understand that they, in order to keep up their innovation, and I'm not saying that they are succeeding. Some might argue that, well, Google is failing because they never had a good product since search and things like that, right?
YouTube is, I mean, they didn't make it, but YouTube is perfect. I think it's the best social media we have.
Yes, but YouTube, I mean, first of all, they didn't make it. They just bought it. And yeah, I mean, it's very old, right? Like YouTube is very old. Gmail is very old. Like there are cases other than the search engine that a lot of people are using it. For example, Gmail, right? Google Photos is another thing, right? A lot of people are using, or Google Docs. But still, with some of these success, a lot of failures, right? There is this website called killedbygoogle.com. You don't have a Jamie to pull it up, but it's like a graveyard of all the products that Google killed. And there are a ton of them. There are a ton of technologies. So that's why, like, whenever Google like introduces a new framework and all of that, a lot of people are like look at it with a lot of skepticism, because they're like, okay, I don't want to use this product, build some sort of a program with it, and then all of a sudden, after like 2 years, you just drop the support for it. And it's terrible for people who are using it, because that's the main like maintainer. And no one is like, and although open source sounds good and everyone thinks, oh, well, like once you make something open source, then people are going to maintain it. No. Like, unless there's funding behind at least one of like the organizations that are like actively maintaining it, no one is going to like maintain it to that level. 99.9% of open source projects, even more, are just going to die because their main maintainer was just bored. They weren't getting any money. And there are some initiatives to try to change that. They're trying to, for example, they have like now GitHub sponsors, so that you can like, it's kind of like Patreon. The good thing is they will not take any cut of it. GitHub doesn't take any cut of it, obviously. I mean, if they did, then that would be like an evil thing probably to do. And this way, maybe you can kind of you can also sponsor these like developers using like your own company's account. So this way, you maybe are showing that the fact that your company is actively being a part of these initiatives, supporting open source, contributing. And all of these. So there are some movements about it. So at least the creator, the maintainer of those, can have a living and maintaining these projects. But usually it's just a very tough work, and someone just gets bored and they say, oh, well, like there is no financial incentive for me to do it. I don't get any love from this project anymore, so I'm just going to let it go. And all the big open source projects, they are backed by a huge company, or many companies then later invest in it, and they like have certain engineers of them just contribute and things like that. I don't know, like you think about like React, Flutter, RIP Angular JS, whatever, by Google, who died. Now Angular is still alive, but and all of these, for example, React is supported by Facebook. It was created in Facebook. GraphQL in Facebook. Flutter in Google. So all of these things, they're kind of supported by a company, and internally these companies should allow their engineers to go on track and like try to make new things, try to be innovative. Because if they don't do it, then they will kind of be Microsoft like 10 years ago, where they don't have anything new. They are solely relying on the Windows sales to keep them above water.
So I see a lot of growing interest for open source in general, with Microsoft, other companies, but not with governments. I don't think transparency is a concept in governance, but do you see a world where we actually have open source government infrastructure?
To be honest, if Microsoft can do it, I don't see why not. Because Microsoft was this enemy of open source. They really hated it. Now they are loving it, like 180 degrees, just change in behavior. Microsoft was a company hating on Linux. They were hating on open source. They were very against it for the longest time. And now they are making this. First of all, they had like Visual Studio. You had to like pay how much like fuckload of money in order to purchase that. You had to pay fuckload of money for Office. You had to pay fuckload of money for Windows. All of these things. So they were basically, their entire company was based solely on proprietary software and selling that.
Which doesn't work anymore.
Of course, they are not going to make anything open source. It's like their whole business model was around the fact that you are locked in and now you have to purchase their shitty software. And not only that, you have to like continue purchasing their shitty software because that's how their ecosystem works. I was never in my life a Microsoft developer, ever. So I never used any of their technologies. So I am no expert in this topic. But what I know from what I've seen from other people, for example, you wanted to make something for the backend, you had to like use ASP.NET, which is a Microsoft technology. Then you had to, and in general, like the .NET framework. And you want to use C#, which is a Microsoft language with it. And then you have to use SQL Server, which is the Microsoft database. And you have to have it on a Windows server. And so on and so forth. So you see how this is. And this is actually the backend, and this is the kind of the infrastructure that a lot of big companies are actually using. A lot of governments are actually using. They're using Microsoft stuff. And their Windows is just so huge and no one is using anything else for some reason that they can get away with it, because that's kind of the thing that people know. And it baffles me. It really does. Still, the amount of jobs and the amount of people who require this, because it's just legacy. And these people, I mean, they are very comfortable with it. I mean, these technologies are, in my opinion, I didn't use them. So maybe someone says, oh my God, ASP.NET is absolutely the best. C# is the best language that Microsoft has ever created. I don't know. I didn't use them. So but what I feel is that it's not true. So I feel like this is like shit, actually. But I would not tell an engineer to like relearn a technology, right? I would just tell them, oh, well, you used this for 15 years, just do it. Just use it again. So even new products, to some extent, they are using this. Legacy ones, absolutely. And Windows Server, Microsoft stuff have a lot of different problems. So they kind of understood this, and they were like, okay, this is not really the day that we can really compete with Linux, because day by day, I mean, Linux wasn't successful at all in desktop. They lost the battle in desktop. And the reason for it was, again, kind of the over-engineering and under-designing.
Was Linux open source from the beginning? From day one?
From the get-go. Okay. So the guy who made it, Linus, he just kind of like coded it himself like in his room.
Eh.
Just and he is still the maintainer of Linux to this very day. Just a guy. And no, well, he's not coding now. I think he stopped coding like a few months ago, I would say, like himself, and he's now just managing basically this whole like huge community of people who are contributing to the Linux kernel, to all of that. So Linux wasn't successful in desktop. However, I would say like 90% of servers are all using Linux. So it was like hugely successful in that market. And so Microsoft had to like come to its senses and say that, well, this is not kind of the future. And they embraced it. So that was an amazing move.
And quite suddenly, right? Like it was.
And it was, I think it was, well, like basically Nadella did it. Like Satya was the person who did it.
Why did Bill Gates choose Steve Ballmer? I know like he was in the company for 20 something years and they basically made the company together, but he wasn't.
I have no idea. I mean, Microsoft to me is the cringiest company. Like, have you seen like the way that they were like presenting their stuff? Like, they were a couple of nerds, you know, like that's the thing. They were a couple of nerds who got to this position and didn't know any better. I mean, and it worked. I mean, the formula worked. I mean, they made a shitload of money. Mm-hmm. So why would ever go back and like try to find a different? Like, you would be stupid to like change the formula. It works. So their formula worked for the time.
They had fucking great timing. Just perfect timing.
Right? Like their formula worked. Everything worked for Microsoft. They still exist. A lot of companies don't exist.
Yeah.
So why would they change? But then they realized that okay, we need to change if we want to stay relevant. We definitely need to change. And they did. And now all of a sudden you had Visual Studio, which was proprietary, and now we have VS Code, the number one used and loved editor based on like Stack Overflow survey. And
it's open source?
Open source. 100%. So only Visual Studio for Windows, then making a very bad version of Visual Studio for Mac that you have to still pay for. 2, making Visual Studio Code for Windows, Linux, Mac, you name it. From that company to this company. From the company of having this .NET framework to right now actually having this new .NET framework that is open source. So they are kind of realizing, okay, this is the way that we need to go forward because people are just interested in this. If they can use good open source technology that is like perfect, why would they like pay? Like, there's no reason. There's no reason. Like if they can use, for example, this database called like a Postgres SQL or MySQL, like open source. Postgres is like so damn powerful. Like why would they like use a SQL Server or something like that? So they are starting to realize this, and they did a lot of different things to move to open source, and I think they are doing a great job. They bought GitHub. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were like, oh my God, they bought GitHub. But they did a lot of amazing things. Like all of a sudden, people were very skeptical. Like they were like, oh my God, Microsoft bought something, it's done.
Yeah.
Right?
But like Google. Google also kills basically everything it buys.
But then it didn't. It didn't. And actually, I feel like the current system of GitHub is actually very cool. Mm-hmm. So they are building features to basically make this sponsoring of other developers easier than ever. They added this Patreon-like feature. They also show you based on your repos, so they scan your dependencies, and then they suggest you based on the dependencies. It's like, hey buddy, you are using this project in your like this open source project in your projects. What if you sponsor it? And then they show you the dependencies and the guys who created it. So you're not just feeling like, okay, I'm lost, who should I sponsor? If you're not like really active. It's like, okay, if you're coding, you have some dependencies, and you can like sponsor just a dude there. It's not as big, but there are still people who are like actively being a full-time open sourcer on GitHub. And they are being sponsored. There are other websites. There is like Open Collective.
Do you believe in free will?
Free will? I don't know. Tough question.
Okay, I'll formulate my argument that.
Do you say that we have free will or we don't?
We don't. We don't have free will in the way that is traditionally thought of free will. Mainly because I don't believe the idea of self that most cultures and most traditions have holds any truth in reality. It's just a bunch of chemicals and actions and reactions.
I mean, sometimes I agree with you because, like, I don't know. Sometimes I get like hungry, and then I like completely like behave like a weird person. And like later on, when I like reflect back and like why I did certain actions that I did, I'm like, oh, but I was just hungry. It's like, how can you have this like free will? Like if you kind of like act this, like all of a sudden act a certain way when you're just like out of fuel to a degree. So it is kind of fun to think about it that way, that you don't actually have it and it's just a bunch of chemicals.
I mean, first of all, I feel like knowing that or believing that you don't have it doesn't really make a difference on a day-to-day. I still, well, okay, here's one thing. I do what I do. I keep myself busy so that I don't think about these thoughts. But funny enough, I actually, chose something to do that it involves talking about these stuff. But anyway, generally I try to avoid it on a day-to-day because it's just too depressing.
It's not depressing. I don't think
it can get depressing if you're in a low mental health situation.
Are you in a low mental health situation?
I was quite recently, and
Do you want to talk about it
thoughts,
on podcast?
Not necessarily. It was it was post quarantine, but I was still quarantined because of reasons. I was literally on a hill. In a house, in a room, no contact with the outside world.
Let's talk about it after the podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think that, I mean, in general, this is the same argument. It's like, okay, is there a life after death? It's like, no, right? But is it depressing?
It's depressing to me today, but it won't be depressing to my corpse because it's just gone. Here's the thing, like that. We obviously don't know what consciousness is, but what it seems like is just a little, when you cook something and there's this nice smell in the whole house, that's what consciousness feels like. It's that smell that also makes the food more delicious.
Well, what I know is you are a collection of cells. And each one of those want to live. So I think the best strategy for them was to form this consciousness, quote unquote, so that like the brain doesn't say, oh, well, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about you. Hand cell, die. So you think of yourself as a whole. So these cells work together. Maybe there were other forms of life. that maybe were multi-conscious. That makes any sense. But I think at the end, it kind of gets converged to for a lack of a better word, a mono conscious species. So a mono conscious species is like what I don't know these words, I'm just making up, but is what I want to think of as us, and like probably all of the species that we know of. But maybe a bi-conscious, maybe there is a bi-conscious species. I don't know. Maybe like imagine like the half of your brain would like decide for half of your body, which it actually to a degree does, right? Like your right half decides for the left of your body, and vice versa. But imagine like there was even more so of a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
So then that would be kind of that would introduce more arguments in a way. Even within yourself, you still have some like counterintuitive stuff going on.
There's a lot of randomness, which is why you can't have destiny. You know, like let's just say 99% of the actions that a living thing takes are a reaction to its environment, whether it's just hunger or the drive for reproduction, whatever. But there's like one element, the tiny amount of randomness somehow. Maybe there isn't any randomness, or maybe it's so tiny that it doesn't affect anything. But I feel like that randomness is what makes, because that randomness could be Hitler deciding to declare war on USSR, or for Genghis Khan to have that extra wife who happens to have a kid who does something. It's so much randomness when you add it up, billions of hundreds of 108 billion people, and if tens of thousands of years, you're getting somewhere. You're making history.
Well, I mean, I'm not really talking about destiny here per se.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about is, I think, evolutionally speaking, it makes sense for a bunch of cells to bundle up together. It made sense at some point. And then not only that, but also the species themselves to bundle up together and form societies. And there is, if that's the case, then probably you can also define some sort of a social consciousness that is like the consciousness of your city that you're living in, or the town that you're living in, or just like the university that you're in. I mean, it's the same as like a bunch of cells that created you have this like mono consciousness. Probably there is like another consciousness on that level as well.
And you sort of see this, like Twitter has its own little weird culture and collective consciousness.
Yeah. And like there are sometimes that like some of the decisions that you make don't make any sense, right? Like, for example, your brain knows that smoking is bad, but yet you do it. And here you're kind of deciding which cell of your body to please. Like to please the brain with some dopamine, apparently, that the smoking might release. I'm not chemically intelligent enough to know exactly the biochemistry of the brain or anything like that. I'm just like assuming. But versus the fact that your lungs are going to be fucked or whatnot. And you know both of these, and yet you decide at a certain point to do one or the other. And this is like similar to how, say, in real life, maybe between two people, you're kind of sometimes deciding, hey, like we need to give this guy something extra. And it's very difficult to like keep everything balanced. I don't know, and no one does, what is the answer to it all, and what is this consciousness that we are talking about? Is the piece of code that I write get conscious or not? And what is the condition for it to get conscious?
You think we live in a simulation, right? You think we live in a simulation, right?
Yeah.
Like 100% certain about it? Or
That's the most likely thing.
okay.
Because like after a while, you are going to make a simulation for other things. And since probably the time as we know it is infinite, and I'm not even sure if this is a construct within a simulation or is it just like an inherent thing that happens everywhere. Because like you can make a simulation like very easy simulation, right? Like the Conway's game of life. If you maybe you've heard about this, maybe you haven't. It's basically like a cell automata, and there are like very easy rules. So you start from like a grid, and you have certain ones of these grids that have like a set bit or 1 in them, and then the rest of are 0. And then there are like very easy rules to convert from a certain grid position to another one. I don't remember the rules, to be honest, but I will try my best. It is something like, oh well, if you have 3 bits adjacent. So imagine a grid. If adjacent to this cell, we have 3 different cells that are also on, this cell is going to stay on, or something like that. If it's 4, then it's going to turn back off. If it's 1, then it's going to also, like, if there are a clump of like 2 cells next to each other, they're just going to, for example, die or something like that. But if it's like 2, so there are a bunch of different rules about it. All right. And you can make very, very complex stuff with this game of life. You actually, it's provable. And actually, let me actually search this up, because I don't want to I want to actually say the correct rules. Okay, so any live cell with fewer than 2 live neighbors dies. It's kind of like if it's underpopulated.
Yeah.
So if we have, for example, just 2 live cells next to each other, they both die, because this guy has only 1 neighbor, this guy has only 1 neighbor, so they both die.
And then that's it.
That's it. Yeah. So this clump, maybe there are like other cells, other places, but this clump just dies, right? Second rule, any live cell with 2 or 3 live neighbors lives to the next generation. So say if we have like 3 in a line, this middle one is going to live because it has like 2.
And they'll reproduce.
No, they won't reproduce.
Okay.
Any live cell with more than 3, so 4, will die as if by overpopulation. Right? So it's kind of like a stuck. So if you have a cell that is like, say if you have a plus sign in a way, this middle one is going to die because it has 4 neighbors.
Okay.
And neighbor is every cell on the 8, it basically has 8 neighbors. So diagonal neighbors are also considered. So you can be a neighbor of not only right, left, down, and up. You can also be like top down, bottom left, and so on. Third one, any live cell with more than, well, I said this one actually. And 4, any dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbors, exactly 3, will become a live cell, as if by reproduction. So these are the 4 rules, very simple rules. Encoding these rules, remembering these, is obviously difficult because I didn't. But it is easy if you try to remember it, right? Like, so there are 4 rules. Now as I know it, I can recall it pretty quickly. The first one is the underpopulation rule. So if a cell has less than 2 live cells in the neighbors, will die. The second thing is if a live cell has 2 or 3 neighbors, it will stay live.
Mm-hmm.
If it has more than 3, so 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, it will die because of overpopulation. And if a dead cell has 3 live cells neighboring to it, it will kind of switch back to life. And that's the game of life. Now, you can run simulations with some starting positions to see what will happen. First things first, this game happens to be Turing complete. What is Turing completeness? This dude called Alan Turing, he had like this theory about computers and like what a computability and all of that. So there was this machine, like very, very simple machine called the Turing machine that had like very, very simple operations. And he proved that if you can do this kind of things with this very simple machine called the Turing machine, you can compute anything. And in a way, by proving, so right now, in order to prove the completeness of like a compute system, what they are doing is, like mathematicians try to reduce a problem from its original sense to Turing machine and say that they are kind of equivalent. So if you can prove that these two are equivalent, since Turing machines and like your modern computer is a Turing complete machine, it can do anything that a Turing machine can do. There is a little caveat, but we'll not get into it. So the thing is, you can turn this game of life into a Turing machine. So it's Turing complete. Technically speaking, if you have a large enough grid, you can run Overwatch on it. Like, that's a crazy thing to say, but technically with only these rules. So the rules were underpopulation, overpopulation, staying the same, and like reproduction, right? 4 rules. With these 4 rules, you can simulate everything that your computer does. So there are cool things that you can create with this grid, just without going all bonkers. So there are people who like created computers with that. It's kind of like similar to how you would create some stuff with like Minecraft, but in a very simpler game. And you can, for example, make there are interesting things that can, for example, move. So there is like an easy way to make something that kind of moves in the board. So it kind of like flips and moves. And then you can use these constructs in order to make very, very complex constructions. You can go and search about it or watch some YouTube videos and so on. But the idea is that, okay, it's very interesting, it's very powerful. So given this very simple thing and being this powerful, I think that there is a possibility for this world to be a generative function. So because if it's not a generative function, if it's not being generated, if everything is like requires some sort of a parameter, then I think that we will run out of parameters. We will run out of memory in the universe. We'll run out of data that we can possibly encode to say about any single moment, to predict any single moment of the entire universe.
So this is why the universe dies, basically, in your theory.
It's not about the fact that the universe dies. It's about the fact that, can you encode everything in the universe? Can you like give me however big of a number, say, that can produce the state of the universe? Or is it a generative thing?
But is that running, though? Is all of the universe running at the same time? Or is it like, let's say I'm playing Red Dead Redemption and it's like the world exists, but it's not processed at any given time.
But
my field of...
Okay, I get what you're saying. But what happens is, in Red Dead Redemption, you have the data for every place.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that would be too much data for anything to handle. For the universe itself to handle the amount of data. Like, what is this base thing that you have in the universe? Like, whatever, electron, even go further, I don't know, whatever the thing, bosons, or I don't know. Whatever that base thing is, there is like a bunch of data about itself. So like storing all of that information within the system itself, that would be bonkers.
Then maybe the rest doesn't exist. Maybe the rest is just illusion.
I think that this whole thing is a generative function. And that can explain a bunch of different stuff. If we are playing something like Game of Life, it is Game of Life, but very complex that you can't make sense of it. And the challenge is to find that function that kind of runs, like gets the previous state, does something with it, and then produces the next one. There are people who are trying to find that, and in general, it's very interesting to think about this universe to be as a very discrete thing, which we assume that is continuous. And I think that it, like, real numbers don't make any sense to me. I'm a computer scientist, so real numbers don't make any sense to me. When I'm in computer science, when you try to like represent a real number, you have this weird things with bits and all of that. Like you can't like represent a real number like accurately. Like you can use strings and whatnot, right? But like at the end, like how can you represent pi accurately? Like there are numbers that you just cannot represent accurately. So to me, this inaccuracy is not like a problem for like about with the computers that we have or anything like that. I think that this is just something that we take for granted, that like this exists, and there are like a lot of mathematics and physics that are talking about this continuous stuff, versus inherently I think the universe is discrete. So the way that I think about it is like, okay, what is the Planck constant? I'm just going to, I don't know, Google it. Like, what is the Planck constant? So basically, the Planck length is derived from the speed of light, the Planck constant, and so on. The Planck length is, and I'm saying Planck constant by mistake. Planck constant is another thing, but it is derived from that, is 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 35 meters. And this is the smallest distance about which current experimentally corroborated models of physics can make meaningful statements. So anything below this length, what is it? Isn't length continuous? It's like we can't talk about anything below this length currently. It's like 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 35. We can't go any lower than this. So what if you take this as a 1 unit and then everything else is discrete? And then you, all of a sudden, it's no longer like, oh, well, we can't really get to the correct number of pi. Then we have an exact number for pi. Because this radius thing that is like pi times something is actually, okay, like it's a discrete line that is like tick, 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 tick. It's like you can't see it because it's 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 6, but it's an exact number. It's not like just something arbitrary. And so we are just encoded in this space that is actually discrete. And if that's the case, then we could just be generated by some generative function, some sort of a Turing machine that is running this entire universe. And we are making another Turing machine within the Turing machine.
Which is something.
Which is, for example, like computer.
Okay.
And then you can make a Turing machine simulator inside your computer. No problem.
We already do like a primitive version of it.
No. We can do like a Turing machine within our Turing machine and then another Turing machine within that. Like that's very possible.
Do you think we can simulate something resembling the universe that we have here in a
It
simulation?
doesn't have to be that. That's
Well,
a
has to
big
be
issue.
more interesting.
That's a big issue. No. Actually, it doesn't have to be that. It can just be an incremental thing. It doesn't have to be a simulation that is like all of a sudden like very interesting and like more complex than our own universe. It doesn't have to be.
We are sort of taking the incremental steps.
And it's fine, and it's good enough for you to kind of realize.
Okay.
Like right now, when you think about people who thought that the Earth is flat, is like, oh well, didn't they look at the sky and see sun and moon, and they were like circular? Didn't they see like Mercury once in a blue moon, like, and it was circular? Didn't they look up in the sky, see everything was like a sphere? And then they thought that they are the only flat thing. This sounds maybe ridiculous to you. And I'm not like assuming that my theory is like 100% correct. But like if you look at it, if you look at the world and you look at the things that we are doing, with the things that we are simulating, it kind of makes sense that this is also a simulation.
I agree with you. But I mean, we can't disprove it, but it's the most convincing argument about the nature of the universe that I've heard.
Yeah. And physicists and all of that, like they are trying to tackle this problem from another side. They're trying to find the rules about this simulation. What I'm saying is that like when you start to, well, I mean, to mathematically understand it, this is completely fine, because like when you have this such a small constant of 10 times minus 35, 10 to the power of minus 35, that is such a small constant that of course you can like integrate a function, because like that's the kind of the idea behind integrating. You take like a very small constant and you integrate something. So when you are integrating something that you feel like as though it was continuous, it is like, it doesn't matter to your brain or like you with a big accuracy of a number to really think about it as something that is, say, something that is continuous or something that is discrete but with the steps of 10 to the power of minus 35. Like it doesn't really make a difference for your day-to-day job or engineering. It really doesn't. And actually the best way to go about it is to use these continuous mathematical building blocks that we already have. That's the best thing that we can do, because who wants to sum, like for example, the function, but the way that they want to do it is to go every step of 10 to the power of minus 3. Like they go one by one, they like evaluate all of these, and then instead of like integrating, they like go through each one of these steps and like calculate this function, the sum of function over a specific range. So no one wants to do that, and no need to do it. You can just integrate it. But what I'm saying is that don't let this integrating and having all of these sorts of continuous functions in the world necessarily convince you that everything is continuous. There are cases that I think that it should be made that we are not necessarily living in a continuous world. So you can't forever kind of divide 2 points. There's this like old thing, is like kind of some sort of a paradox that is like, I don't know, there is this turtle that is moving, and then there is this rabbit that is getting closer to the turtle. Say that whatever number of seconds, it kind of halves the distance it has with the turtle, and turtle is like moving very slowly. The idea is that it never reaches the turtle. In real world, you see that the rabbit passes the turtle. But in the mathematical model, you're adding half plus a quarter plus an eighth plus a 16th and so on. And this is converging to 1, but never really reaching even 1 and not beyond it.
Do you think it's dangerous to share this theory of simulation? Because I have this fear that once we spread this enough, and once, let's say in 100 years, enough people are convinced, then some crazy motherfucker, I think GeoHot is trying to already do this. Some motherfucker will try to break out of it. And once they break out of it, this
But
simulation
how
will
do
be
you
shut
break
down.
out of it?
Or somehow change the fabric.
I mean, there is a huge question about it. This is just like a very, very basic theory. And I'm not the person who generated this theory. People think about this. But I don't know how we can exploit it at this point. There is no exploitation.
Somehow changing the source code. I don't even. It's like a 5-year-old.
I have no idea. Yes. So the idea, the thing is like, it is very complex to try and, for example, I don't know, change a single bit of the universe in a way, if like, just for the lack of a better term to discuss about this. It's very complex to like change a single bit of the universe. Like whatever action you do changes like a shitload of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like what makes it very difficult to like try very specific things in isolation. And this is what makes like quantum computing very difficult. You know, like the idea is a qubit can be a bunch of different things. It can be like 0, it can be 1 at the same time until you look at it. That's the whole idea behind quantum computing.
What do you mean until you look at it?
This is the crazy thing about it. So the idea is, what is quantum computing? Let's talk about this. So quantum computing is basically based on the fact that instead of bits that we are using in normal computers that are 0s and 1s, let's use qubits, quantum bits, that are either 0 or 1, or can be both at the same time, some probability, I don't know, something like that. But okay, how do we store this? So, okay, imagine that we have a construct to store this. Now the thing is, there is a quantum state, and like the Schrodinger's cat and so on, like it can be dead and alive at the same time. But when you look at it, you're kind of spoiling the secret. And you know that it's 1 or 0. So it can never go back to that state. Now, the challenge with quantum computers is, once you have a number of qubits, there are so many interactions between these qubits that you don't want to look at it. You shouldn't. You shouldn't even accidentally look at it, right? And the whole engineering challenge here is to try to make it hidden. Because if you look at it, then it will be a normal computer.
I'm a bit confused when you say look at it. Look at it means output the data. Is that what you're saying? Or just
anyhow that you understand what if it's 0 or 1.
Okay.
If you look at the box and see the cat's dead, it's like, okay, the cat's dead. There's no mystery anymore. The cat's dead.
Okay.
The cat's not alive anymore. So it's either a 0 or a 1. It's a kind of a dark thing to say, like, oh, well, the cat's dead, so it's a 0.
It's kind of like a little kid when you don't want to actually know whether your animal's
dead,
so you ignore it.
But the thing is, it's very challenging. It's very challenging to make a quantum computer, because it's very hard to control the side effects of everything that makes up the quantum computer. You don't want to look at it like with your eyes, but maybe you put another element in it, and that element kind of observes the bit, but it shouldn't. The bits shouldn't be observed by anything else.
So how the fuck are we doing it?
Well, we are doing it. We are doing it at least for a small number of qubits.
Okay.
So that's the crazy thing about it. Basically, you have constructs that by the time that you don't go and peek, they can be anything. And that's the power of them. The fact that we can kind of parallelize infinitely many things. A 2 to the power of n algorithm can be like a n algorithm. Because instead of checking every state for the 0 and 1, you can check it like for both at the same time. Or something like that. So a lot of these problems, there are like quantum algorithms for these like classical computer problems that are thought to be very difficult to solve. Like this class of problems called the NP problems. that are not necessarily polynomial. We couldn't find a polynomial solution for these problems. There are a lot of them. For example, the traveling salesman problem, or in this new era, I should say, traveling salesperson problem, is a problem that you basically have the salesperson, and he or she wants to go to all of these cities, and kind of wants to find a way to go through all of these cities and then come back to its own and say spend the least amount of money on gas because he wants to, for example, go on. And like whatever the kind of problem that is, like finding some sort of a cycle in a graph that is a Hamiltonian cycle. So it contains every single vertex of the graph. And so basically you visit every place once and you come back to its own. And you want to find, for example, the minimum weight. So if on each edge there is a weight, there is this problem. And then there is, for example, there are a lot of these problems that they can be reduced to one another. And so they form a class of different problems. For example, there is another problem of finding the maximum click in a graph. So a click in a graph is a component that every two vertices in the component are connected to each other. But by component, I mean not a usual component, I mean a subgraph. So a subgraph of this graph. So if you take a bunch of vertices and each two of them are connected to each other. So let's put it in a real world example. Say that you're Facebook, and you want to find this maximum group of people that are just all friends with one another. That turns out to be a very, very difficult problem. So again, what is that group of friends? Say that, for example, if me, you, Jonathan, I'm friends with you, you're friends with Jonathan, and I'm friends with Jonathan. So each two of us are friends with another. We are forming a clique of 3. So we are basically a triangle. And then if there is a fourth person that all 3 of us, say Naza, all 3 of us are friends with that person, then we are making a clique of 4. So now, given this entire friendship graph of all people, what is the largest group of friends that like each two of them are like connected? So this doesn't count like if I'm friends with you and you're friends with someone else, but I'm not. Again, for example, problems like this, they always had this very difficult way of solving. Like we couldn't solve them in polynomial time. We could solve a bunch of different problems in polynomial time. All the basis of algorithms is based on this. But we couldn't solve these problems, at least not efficiently and not the correct answer of them. Maybe we had like algorithms that like kind of were heuristic. Say, well, we can kind of give you the largest click, like within an order of like 2. Say like this click, if we find this, like maybe like some computer scientists like could come up with some algorithm that is polynomial and doesn't necessarily give you the biggest or the largest click in a graph, but instead gives you, say, a click of size x and guarantees that there is no click of size more than 2x.
Okay.
So sometimes this is good enough for like the application, like depending on the application. So you just want to have some sort of heuristic about it. And this is good to know this. But we can't do any better with classic computers.
So if you want accuracy, you gotta go quantum.
Yeah, and if you have a bunch, like if the n is say 10, then you can like check every single fucking possibility, right? So you can just say, well, I want to see if these people are connected. How many different possibilities do I have? Well, for example, I can just do a binary search and answer to find the maximum k, or just go through one by one. So I first assume that the k is 1, then I assume that the k is 2. So k is the size of the maximum click I have in the graph, and then I can go all the way to k equals to 10, and then I can select with choose of nk. I can select k people from this n people, and then just check them manually, each two of them, see if they are connected to each other or not. So that's kind of going to be like n factorials times n or something like that, or times n squared, which is fine. Like when you have 10, is like n factorial times 100. It's like fine. 10 factorial is not that much. You can do it. But once this goes to even 20 factorial, then you're all of a sudden you're like screwed. So probably you need a very better computer, or you need to take more time. And this goes to 200 factorial, and probably not even the supercomputer can do it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is like the problem with factorial, because it's not polynomial, it's not a polynomial function, same as like 2 to the power of n, it's an exponential function, it's not a polynomial function, is that it grows too damn fast. 2 to the power of 100 is like impossible, downright impossible to check 2 to the power of 100 different things.
So would this simulation be running on a quantum computer? Because it's too big to be handled by a...
So the thing is, say you have an algorithm that wants to like check 2 to the power of n different states. In a normal computer, you have to like go through n different bits and say, okay, now I'm going to start with 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, all the way to 0. So n zeros. Now I'm going to go 0, 0, 0, 0, all the way to 1. 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, and so on. So you have to go through all 2 to the power of n different states. So this is going to take a total load of time. So you could, for example, try to do it better by like parallelizing this, right? Like, for example, have 100 different computers, but it's going to just divide this by 100. Because like all of these could like take a subset of these states and then they run it. Quantum computer, on the other hand, kind of says, well, I don't want to like do to the power of 100 different things. I want to just like run it, and each one of these bits can be anything from 0 to 1. Can be 0, can be 1. So they are kind of encapsulating the whole 2 to the power of n states, because they can be both 0 and 1. So this is kind of crazy to think about, but there are algorithms that work with this feature when the bits can be 0 or 1 at the same time. Once we peak, we know that they are indeed a specific thing, and that is going to cause a problem. But if we do manage to do it, there are then two cases. Either we should then prove that we didn't need that quantum computers. We could still use Turing machines to solve the same problem. Or we kind of accept defeat and say, well, we can't do certain problems without quantum computers. And then agree that maybe the universe is not running on a Turing machine, but maybe on a quantum computer. So the universe that we are currently living. That depends on whether or not we can. And it's $1 million to prove that P is equal to NP or not. And this is like big money in computer science, because who cares?
Who set this price?
Like there is this organization that has like 7 or something like different mathematical, like big mathematical problems. Like one of them is already solved. Some Russian dude solved it and just didn't get the prize. It was like, okay, take your 1 million. Like, I don't want. I just did it for fun and gigs.
Why the fuck wouldn't you accept money?
I don't know.
Accept money, folks.
So let me search for like open problems math. And there is this like big like prize money, probably like 1 million unsolved math problems, 1 million. That one. Millennium Prize Problems. This is the name. This is the real name. So how many problems are there? So the first one is obviously P versus NP. So the question is whether or not for all problems for which an algorithm can verify a given solution quickly, that is in polynomial time, an algorithm can also find that solution quickly. Since the former describes a class of problems termed NP, while the latter describes P. The question is equivalent to asking whether all problems in NP are also in P. This is generally considered one of the most important open questions in mathematics and theoretical computer science. and as it has far-reached consequences to other problems in mathematics and to biology and philosophy and cryptography. A common example of NP problem, not known to be in P, is Boolean satisfiability problem. So, for example, in the Boolean satisfiability problem, we have a bunch of Booleans, like each one can be true or false, and we have a bunch of different conditions. We say that we don't know they're Booleans themselves, or maybe we do. But we have a bunch of different conditions. Say, for example, we know that A or B and C is true, and C and D is false. And we have a bunch of these conditions, and we want to see if this is satisfiable or not. So I think that this is a good problem, actually. So scratch that, because that's harder to reason about, why this n factorial kind of translates to this. And I don't want to kind of waste time. But this is actually a good problem, because this is quite easy to explain. So, okay, we have a bunch of true or false variables, and we don't know if they are true or false, but we know a bunch of conditions are true. Say that we have A, B, and C. So we say, oh, well, A and B is true, and B or C is false. Okay? Is there any distribution of true and false on A, B, and C that these two conditions are true or not? So we say if it's satisfiable or not. Can we satisfy these conditions by saying that, okay, A is true, for example, something. So I said A and B is true, and B or C is false. This is obviously not satisfiable, because since A and B are true, this means that B is definitely true. And since B or C is false, this means that both of them should be false. So B should be true and should be false, which can't be the case. So here, we can't actually assign true and false to A, B, and C in order for this condition to hold. But there are cases that this can obviously happen. For example, A or B is true and B or C is true. One possible answer would be if A is false, B is true, and C is false. Or if all of them are true. If A is true, A is false, B is true, and C is false, or for example, all of them are true. Or any one of them is or maybe A is true and C is true. I don't know if you're following me as I'm saying this. It's kind of, I'm going all through the A or B and C and all of that.
65% of the
but you get the idea, right? Yeah. So that's the idea. Now, 2SAT is a specific satisfiability problem that only deals with the conditions that are for two variables. So we only have A, then B, or B, then C's. What do I mean? For example, we have A, then B means if A were true, then B is also true. So if we have only these kind of conditions, and we can kind of convert OR and ANDs into these kind of conditions. If we have only these kind of conditions and they are 2 by 2, so they are not complex, they are not A or B or C or something like that, we can solve it. So 2SAT is polynomial. But the general case, and even 3SAT, is no longer polynomial. So we can't find an algorithm to polynomially check if these conditions are satisfiable. So what are we left to do when we can't find a good algorithm? We check every single position. And every single possible answer is exactly to the power of n. Each one of these. So the best thing that we can currently do is to check every single possible combination of trues and falses. And since we have n different variables, say a1 all the way to a sub n, that's 2 to the power of n different possibilities. So this is one just easy way to think about, okay, this is a hard problem. And if we have 100 different variables, it's downright impossible, right? Because 2 to the power of 100, it's a huge number. Now, quantum computers, they can kind of do their magic and have these bits that can both be zeros and ones. So they won't need to go through 2 to the power of 100 different ones. because they can like have a certain state that holds a bunch of these. So that's kind of the idea here. So that's quantum computer. And the fact that you don't have to look, that's like crazy, isn't it?
It's kind of weird to me because what happens when you, so how do you continue your calculations once you have to look? At some point you have to look.
Let's like see this concept of quantum like computing.
Say, we need a TV here.
Not looking.
So like I can pull it up like
you should be you should bring one. So I'm just going to like read, I guess, from Yale News. So Yale physicists have given Schrödinger's famous cat a second box to play in, and the result may help further the quest for reliable quantum computing. Schrödinger's cat is a well-known paradox that applies the concept of superposition in quantum physics to objects encountered in everyday life. The idea is that a cat is placed in a sealed box with a radioactive source and a poison that will be triggered if an atom of the radioactive substance decays.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum physics suggests that the cat is both alive and dead, a superposition of states, until someone opens the box and in doing so changes the quantum state. So this hypothetical experiment, envisioned by one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics in 1935, has found vivid analogies in laboratories in recent years. Scientists can now place a wave packet of light composed of hundreds of particles simultaneously in two distinctly different states. Each state corresponds to an ordinary, classical form of light abundant in nature. A team of Yale scientists created a more exotic type of Schrödinger's cat-like state that has been proposed for experiments for more than 20 years. This cat lives or dies in two boxes at once, which is a marriage of the idea of Schrödinger's cat and another central concept of quantum physics, entanglement. Entanglement allows a local observation to change the state of a distant object instantaneously. Einstein once called it spooky action at a distance. And in this case, it allows a cat state to be distributed in different spatial modes. The Yale team built a device consisting of two 3D microwave cavities and an additional monitoring port, all connected by a superconducting artificial atom. The cat, quote unquote, is made of confined microwave light in both cavities. The cat is big and smart. It doesn't stay in one box because the quantum state is shared between the two cavities and cannot be described separately, said Chen Wang, a postdoctoral associate at Yale and first author of a study in the journal Science. Describing the research, one can also take an alternative view, where we have two small and simple Schrödinger's cat, one in each box, that are entangled. The research also has potential application in quantum computation. A quantum computer would be able to solve certain problems much faster than a classical computer by exploiting superposition and entanglement. Yet one of the main problems in developing a reliable quantum computer is how to correct for errors without disturbing the information. It turns out cat states are a very effective approach to storing quantum information redundantly. For implementation of quantum error correction, generating a cat in two boxes is the first step towards logical operation between two quantum bits in an error-correctable manner, said co-author Robert whatever, professor of applied physics and director of Yale Quantum Institute. Okay, so there's like some stuff from some website. So of course, I mean, I'm not a quantum computing guy, so I have no idea actually. And these are just out of curiosity and just being in the field, these are the things I know. I have no idea about quantum physics like whatsoever. And I almost never did any quantum computing simulations on all of that. Although I want to try it. So I'm interested to try out the quantum computer simulations that are out there. You can write programs for quantum computers already. And they can, for example, you can run it in a simulation. So once we have something, then you kind of are ahead because you have been already experimenting with like simulations of quantum computers. But with that said, what I know that there are challenges, and the fact that we have these entanglements and we have the superpositions, it's as Einstein said it. I mean, it's very spooky, I would say. So in general, to explain all sorts of stuff like this, you're using the model of just Turing machines maybe is difficult. So we might end up trying to explain that the universe is maybe built on top of a quantum computer, and then the simulation that we are living in currently is on a quantum computer, and
it could itself be on several layers of quantum.
It could be some weird mess. So I can't really like peel all these layers of abstraction, but what I know is right now we are trying to exploit, in a way, in the nature. We are trying to exploit nature in order to like solve our arbitrary problems. So I'm always saying like the best way to predict is a strong word. Best ways to but I will say it. Best way to predict something is to like see it unfold. Like there is no more accurate way than just seeing it unfold. It's like, oh, well, I want to predict weather. Well, just wake up tomorrow and see how's the weather. Now, that is not really prediction because it doesn't happen prior to the event. So how can we kind of do this? Well, instead of trying to weather prediction is very difficult because like so many different parameters. Like there is no single formula that can like predict like weather downright to the very exact degree and very exact things. There can be like an atom here and there, and this will cause the rain to not happen, right? So there are just probabilities. So we are only working right now with probabilities when we are trying to, for example, predict the weather of tomorrow. But what if we wanted to be very exact? Well, we could kind of just look at the weather. This is the best thing we can do right now. The thing about quantum is that it's very messy, and there are some randomness about it. And the electron can be anywhere until you look at it. And the position is not like fixed, so we don't know where is it. And there are all sorts of these difficulties with it. And we were trying to come up with formulas to describe this. And we were trying to maybe simulate this in neural computers. But the better way is to just look at the electron and say that, well, we are not going to touch this. We are just going to use this as a tool to then solve other problems. And that's a powerful thing. So the thing that, if you can't defeat it, join it. If you can't simulate it, just use it. Because if weather is such a complex thing, this is a stupid example maybe, but if weather is such a complex thing, then maybe you can use the weather and say that, well, we can't predict the weather. Let's keep it that way. But can we reduce another problem that maybe happens the day after the weather using the weather? That's like a weird way to describe quantum computing. So say that you want to predict the stock market. And you see that stock market is very difficult and weather is very difficult to predict. If you can, I'm not saying that you can, but imagine if you can find a way to reduce stock market into weather. Then you don't need to predict one of these things, one of these two, right? So you can just say, well, I will look at the weather, I will write down these parameters, and then I'm going to, because they are kind of reducible to each other, so I can predict the stock market.
Cool.
Now you would like this reducibility to be happening fast, maybe in polynomial time. But even if it's slower than that, maybe then use a weather computer to also do the transformation for you. But what I'm trying to get at is the fact that we can, for example, do Boolean satisfiability with quantum computers is because we agreed that we don't want to fuck with quantum physics and atoms, you do you. We are just going to use your properties here, just real quick. I'm going to just use your properties so that I can answer my own questions. I don't care about you. I'm not caring about simulating you in my Turing machines. I accepted my defeat. I accepted the fact that I can't simulate you. I can't understand you. I have some formulas about it, but I'm not sure. So instead, I will join you, and together we will solve my other kinds of problems.
There you go. Now it clicked for me. Now I get it.
So you can like clip it.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
So this analogy, I'm obviously coming up with the weather analogy is such a stupid thing. Like someone is going to watch this and say like, oh my God,
What the fuck is this?
what the fuck is this guy saying? So the reason that I actually joined you is because I thought that this is going to be the Space Jam, and I just will be some sort of an idiot.
No. Sir.
In the list of idiots.
This is
I don't want to be in the main thing.
This is gonna go on the channel that you currently support. So,
oh my God. Destination 2100.
You will be the content and the patron. Yeah.
I will be the content and the patron and the butt of the joke.
So you're paying to be here, basically.
I'm paying to be here. I'm paying to be the butt of the joke whenever some guy in your comments says like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yep. That's basically it.
Okay. That sounds fair.
All right. Let me ask you a final question.
Go ahead.
What does love mean to Hossein?
What is this crazy thing out of Lex Friedman's book of...
I'm basically going off Lex Friedman because I haven't found my own shit. So I'm basically going to compile what other podcasts I listen to for a bit until I can find my own voice. That seems like the logical thing to do for now.
It is logical, yeah. Especially for your first individual podcast. Okay. So, well, coming from the fact that we were speaking like so lowly of consciousness, now if we all of a sudden want to speak so highly of love, that would be like kind of weird, right? Because what is even consciousness to then even say what is love? So I think that's like another dimension.
Love is just your consciousness convincing you that you love someone. Because you gotta reproduce, so your genes don't die.
Yeah, but what is consciousness? So if you don't have the answer to that, which we don't, then so why would you have answer to love?
Would you say that's the main bottleneck to understanding humans or life in general?
To understand consciousness? Yeah, I mean, of course. Definitely. It's the term self in general in philosophy, that's a very big thing. Like, do we have a self? What is self? As you said it before, what is that? And I don't know. No one, I think, does, but certain people have theories about it. And coming back from the fact that like everything is a simulation, and then you will get this bleak idea of like, okay, well, nothing is real because everything is a simulation. But what I like to do in life is that I want to have my ideas. I want to think about them. It's like a brain jogging activity. But I don't want to consume myself too much to really think about everything. And I want to relax and say, well, I don't know the answers. And I want to relax and say that I want to make the best out of it. Right? And the best out of it to me is to love and to be relaxed and to not overthink what it should mean necessarily. Because I don't think that that's a healthy thing to do.
Then what I'm doing is unhealthy. Because literally, like, one of the reasons I'm starting this podcast is so that I can have enough arguments and debates with people about what I believe or don't believe or agree or disagree with, that I've basically trained my arguments so much that it's the best argument that it can be. This is basically my way of overthinking.
Well, again, I think like some people devote their lives to it, philosophers. You can be one of those people. Like, I don't want to dictate what you should or shouldn't do. I personally don't want to do that because I don't see, for me, as a software engineer, computer scientist, student, 22-year-old dude, I don't want to do this right now. Or not necessarily ever. I don't know. So I want to be able to talk to you. I want to be able to have a discussion about all sorts of different things. I want to hear these different stuff, but I'm not going to consume myself with these thoughts of like, okay, what is this? Then what is the reason?
Kind of like dessert, not the main course.
Exactly. And I think this is, I found it to be, I have a healthy relationship with these kind of topics. They are not consuming me, and I'm just I'm consuming them. So they are kind of like a intellectual struggle and joy, maybe. But if it's like too much, and if it just like takes over your life, and anything that you think of, like you just want to like ask a girl out, or you just want to love, and you're like, okay, what is the meaning of this? Yeah. It was like, no, that's not the way.
I do that, by the way. I actually
and again, I don't want to like be like so self-righteous and say, oh well, that is the wrong way of doing it. Someone should do it, right? Maybe that you are the person. But for me, and this is what I think, and this is the way that I currently live my life, and that means for you and for people who are seeing this in the future, like 100% of like in 2 months' time, half of my ideas are changing. Like I'm not even 40, so it's not like I'm not going to have different ideas next time in the future. So I don't want to like be so much fixated on what I say now, and I never want to be about anything in general. I'm going to leave myself open to being wrong about a lot of different things. So I'm not going to like form a very strong argument that actually took me a very long time to build. Because if I do that, then I feel like that's kind of counterproductive unless you really train to be open-minded about like this one random dude that just told you some random new thing. Because there are like so many different ideologies in the world and so many different ways of conducting your thoughts that there's no like one best answer. It's like you can't find it. It's too complex.
But it's kind of like boxing. You know, you keep fighting your ideas with each other, and then at some point, someone is going to beat the champion. And then,
but everyone is going to be champion in one's head. It's like you're going to be the champion in your head. Like if I tell you some bullshit idea, I'm sure a lot of people are already subscribing to that bullshit idea. I mean, there are mermans in the world. I used to make. I'm having fun with making fun of them, but I mean, they are subscribing to the idea. They are like, I don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever that is. So they have this idea of the world. They have this religion. They have this specific things. There are many different religions. There are hundreds of religions all over the world. Everyone thinks a different way, and everyone in their brain, they feel convinced. If they weren't, they wouldn't practice it. They feel convinced. They feel absolutely convinced. I think that you should always keep this in mind, that at the end of the day, you're a human and you will be biased, and no matter how much you try to be the person that takes everything with an open mind, you are going to be biased. So why not just accept your biases and just live? Because you are going to be biased, like no matter what you do. And this is like, there is no person, this is maybe something that from all of this discussion, this is maybe something that I can stand by even later. There's like no person that is not biased in the world. That's why like humans are like terrible at like generating random numbers. Like humans are terrible at it.
Or anything random.
Absolutely terrible at like anything random. It's because of like the huge bias that the brain has. Like they can't have a random number generator.
We just suck at that. We shit our pants when there's uncertainty in anything in general. Just we can't.
So to try to bounce off this idea, I mean, this is a very interesting intellectual discussion that you can have with a bunch of different people, and you can enjoy it a lot. And I think it's always a good practice to do, to just live your life and never think outside the box, to never think about these issues is also not good. But to let it take away the joy of what you can achieve in the meantime, to me, that's a little bit unhealthy. Because you can have both. Like you're not restricted to choose one. There are people who restrict themselves. So there are like Buddhist monks that don't marry and don't have fancy clothes, and they live somewhere. And maybe that's something good if you want to do it, for example, for two years. Like, but like in a lifetime, I don't know, some people are doing it. I'm not like trying to ridicule them for doing it. But to me, it feels like an overkill. And this is because the fact that I have this certain biases. And maybe if I wasn't biased like this, then I would think that, oh, well, actually being a Buddhist monk is the best thing in the world. Why not everyone is a Buddhist monk? But to me, it feels like those extremes are a little bit too much. And also so you have to, at some point, you have to just accept that you're just like an ape and a little bit smarter.
Just go with it.
And just go with it. And this is the situation that you are brought up in. This is the kind of consciousness that you have. You have to just make the best of it. Because if not, it's just going to be even more suffering. So you have already the suffering of like not knowing things. The whole human existence is suffering. And it's just going to compound if you want to suffer through it with questioning every single thing, every moment of your life. It's healthy to do it to a certain degree, but like after that, you should dial it back.
That's where you work. You pick something that gets you out of bed so that you stop thinking about it when you can't sleep at night.
But it's but that's not happening to me. So like when I'm going about my day-to-day life, I'm not like thinking, oh my God, what is consciousness? Like I'm just like living.
No, but the suffering. It definitely helps reduce suffering when you actually have something that you're busy with. That's what I have experienced.
Yeah. And you usually always get something to make yourself busy. Even I think even if you're doing meditation, although it seems like you're trying to like put away your thoughts, still you're doing an activity, right? So in a way, still being busy. But I didn't do enough meditation to know for sure. Maybe it's another state of mind. Maybe it's another state of being that is not really being busy. Maybe it's another state. But I never got to that state or know of it for myself to know.
Well,
do you have sponsors already? Should you like do ads now?
I wish. No, so hopefully in like 6 months maybe.
Do you want to plug Identi?
Oh yes, you want to plug Identi? What is this? What is this company that you're starting with?
So Identi is a habit tracker meets social media, but a good social media. And so what we're trying to do is to keep the good aspects of social media, and then remove all the bad stuff. So what are the bad stuff about social media? Say, the fact that you're kind of addicted to it and you're constantly trying to check other people's fake things that they do. Because what you are doing in social media is that you are always portraying the best scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you go to a fun thing, you take a photo. I mean, you don't take a photo of your day-to-day life that is like very basic. Some people do, but most people don't. And those people who do maybe have very extreme lives. There are some people who have extreme lives every day. So what you get a sense when you go to, for example, say Instagram, is that you get overwhelmed by the amount of fun things and interesting things that a lot of people are doing. And since Instagram is also like sorting them based on the number of likes they get or the number of interactions they get, so you just consume this feed of different stuff from other people, and to you it seems like, okay, you're wasting your life versus everyone else is just doing all sorts of amazing stuff. Mark Zuckerberg actually had some sort of a discussion about like what are the kind of like social media evolutions that happened over the years. And you can think about it like the redundancy and the abundance of information increases the willingness to share even the very basic stuff. But unfortunately, we don't have the platform for it yet. So let me explain. First, when the internet was new, we decided to say, well, what is a good thing to do with this? What is a good thing to do with this technology called internet? Well, it's a good thing to make something called a Wikipedia, right? And then try to have all of our famous people there. So if anyone wants to look up a famous people, look up a famous theorem, look up a famous place, whatever that is, they can do it easily through internet. So that was kind of the first evolution. So the first thing we thought about when sharing information was these important information. And then as the time went by, then we thought about, oh, well, maybe let's have blogs and share our thoughts and share the things that we are writing. And so still they are like highly edited, thought about things that, at least initially, they were produced. And then with Facebook and Twitter, all of a sudden, like, Twitter is becoming this thing that you don't even have to think that much in order to tweet. It's almost like a mindless activity. You can just go there and just write a bunch of stuff. It's very easy. You don't need a lot of brain power in order to produce the content needed there. Same thing with Instagram. It's just like take out your phone, take a picture, just post it.
I don't think many people think on Twitter. Definitely no one thinks on Instagram. It's the most branded place humanity has ever invented.
So yeah, and you can see that these are actually like kind of the progression of the social media. And this goes forward and forward. And then you get, for example, things that are even more meta, like this new generation of memes that don't even have any meaning. Because for your brain, it's just doesn't even want to consume any meaning. So like when you, like before, if you had a joke, if you wanted to say a joke, it had to have different parts. It had to have a punchline. And then you had to have a good delivery in order to like communicate that joke. But that's no longer the case. So right now you are no longer trying to make the joke. You are just saying, for example, I don't know, like the meme I love, it's Wednesday, my dudes, right? Like that's maybe like an old meme, but it's one of the first memes that was just like,
what the fuck?
So meta, like what the fuck? And it was hilarious. But it was a what the fuck, it was a big what the fuck. Like there are memes that at least they make some sense. They need a little bit of brain power in order to consume them, right? But there are some memes that like they require absolutely zero. They are just meta memes. They're memeing the meme and they are being their own like blob in this whole thing. And now they are being popular, right? Like there are a lot of those that are very popular. and your brain sees them and like, oh my god, haha. But if you look at them like and say, okay, what is this? You feel like, oh well, it doesn't actually make any sense. Well, why is it funny? Shouldn't be. And then it goes forward and forward and forward. Now, social media right now, you're at least thinking in order to make something funny, you're at least thinking to make something that gets reaction. With even more people having phones, with more people having their smartphones all the time with themselves, one thing that they are not sharing is the boring stuff. They're not sharing the boring stuff. And I would argue that the boring stuff are actually more important because they make way more of your life or any other person's life than the interesting stuff. So the boring stuff, say if you're brushing your teeth, if you're just going to a workout, if you're reading a book, listening to a podcast, whatever that normal day-to-day thing is that you're doing, that is right now the time to share it. Like if you look at the progression, right now it's the time that someone is going to create something that now all of a sudden the boring things are interesting. Because now we exploited everything else. We exploited the overly editing ones. We exploited like the somewhat casual ones with like Instagram. So the Instagram, like no one is like using, I don't know, like no one is like, probably like some models maybe, but like no one is like spending 10 days to like edit a photo and like make it like perfect, right? Maybe some companies or maybe some models or whatnot, but like the majority of people using Instagram, they just like open up their selfie camera, they just post a picture or whatnot. So let's even go beyond this. Let's even be more casual. Now the good thing about it is that all of a sudden it's like we hit a wall. It's like we hit a wall of no longer having like a bad social media. I think this middle phase that we are currently in is more dangerous than the two extremes. So the extreme one is having, say, a social media that everyone is very serious and they write essays to communicate with each other. So that's obviously very good, right? It's like Wikipedia. Or it's like people are writing their own theories. And you can maybe like think about that. So it's like blogs and things like that. Medium. Or YouTube, to a degree. Some channels, they are the work of some guy. They really thought about what is kind of the script of the video. They went on, they filmed it, they edited it. They are deliberate about it. So that's the one extreme. And the other extreme, or right now what we have in this middle, is the Facebook and Instagram and things like that. They provide interesting moments of your life, but they are not like. And then we have this other extreme that they are like the very, very boring aspects of your life, like the things that no one really cares about. But these things are more healthy than the middle one. This thing, the boring thing, is going to make you realize that every single human being is the same as you. So every single human being is not going to be all of a sudden like this crazy mind that has all of this good adventures all the time. They are also humans. So if you encapsulate all of this in a social media, what you get is Identi. Yeah. So Identi goes at this very end. It's capturing people's day-to-day life. So for example, you can track the things that you want to do and you don't want to do. And then other people can keep you accountable. So there are basically two ways that you can use it. So the first way is to get motivated and inspired by the people who are actually doing, and you see that they are putting the work. So like you see this like guy who got like 1 million, 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and you always think, oh my God, this guy is just lucky or whatever. And then in this format, you see that they spend 5 hours a day editing. They spend X hours a day doing research, like whatever the case is. You see the reality, and you don't only see like a one night success. You see the day-to-day grind instead of the end result. You see the journey. So this is a good kind of motivation. Sometimes the motivation can be like too much. Maybe you see this athlete and it's like very good, but since you only see this like the end results, like the picture on the magazine, this is like too much for you to swallow. You cannot comprehend how that is humanly possible. How is it possible that someone is successful to this degree? So you don't have a kind of like a footpath to follow. But this way, when you see a day-to-day journey of these people, when you see day-to-day journey of even your friends and so on, you can get motivated, and you have an actionable thing that you can do. You can just follow them. You can just follow a habit. And that's why, for example, in Identi, we have this feature called adopt a habit. So if we see that a person has a habit and they are publicly sharing this, you can just, with a click of a button, adopt their habit and just try it out. Try it out for a month, have a challenge, and see if you can do it. There's a friend of mine who wanted to be a writer. It's like he always wanted to be a writer. It's like he always wanted to be a writer. Like there is this journey. And then it wasn't until like, I don't know, I think a few years ago, he realized that like in order, like he doesn't like suddenly become a writer. Like there is no like a switch that like you turn on and like say, I am now a writer. There are people who do this, by the way. But, and I will explain about those people.
I mean, they just write it in their bio.
Exactly. Exactly. Writer or entrepreneur or whatever, without any company or anything like that.
I'm the founder of
So they are just, exactly. So there are some people who do this. That's obviously unhealthy as well. But there are also people who are like waiting for this aha moment that they are suddenly a writer. Like that's, you don't turn into it like in a night. It's like all of a sudden you're a writer. No, you gradually
gotta grind
become that. You have to grind it. And things like Facebook is just going to like show you this one picture of this guy, for example, having a top selling book or publishing his book or whatever. But things like Identi are going to show you the history of this guy grinding in order to get there.
Day by day.
This is powerful.
Habit by habit.
Habit by habit, day by day.
I fucking love it. I really like the app. It's when I used it, I don't necessarily use it at the moment because
it's not working at the moment actually.
Oh really? Okay. Well, I'm also not working on any habits, so I'm not, but when I did use it, it was fucking incredible. Like,
we are working on the design, and we are working on the development side of it. So we are planning a redesign, and then once we do, we are going to launch it on Indiegogo. So until then, if anyone's interested, they can go to identi.app and you can sign up for early access. So it's identi.app. And so that's basically the idea. And we have, for example, other features like, well, maybe I cheat myself. Maybe I don't do the habit. Maybe I just press that just to get the satisfaction. Maybe I just press the button to just roll with it. And we have, for example, features that maybe for certain habits, you can specify your friends that need to approve that you actually did the habit, and you have to send them a photo and they swipe left and right to approve whether or not you did a specific habit or not. So that's, I think, is going to be a game changer for a lot of people. I personally have this struggle that like a lot of times I'm like, oh, well, yes, it's true that I didn't like do workout in my generic habit tracker, or maybe if I'm using just a paper. It's like, but the thing is, well, I went out and I didn't have any time. And if I don't tick here, I will lose my streak. So I will just tick it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right. So sometimes you cheat yourself. I mean, the reason that you're doing it for the first place is obviously for self-improvement. So it doesn't really make any sense to cheat yourself out of something that you are doing for self-improvement. But it's human brain, and it's an ape brain.
I actually cheated myself before there was even the social feature of sharing your activity with.
But no. But that's what I'm trying to say. So it's not even about the social feature. It's about the fact that you don't want to, for example, lose your streak, or you don't want to. So there are all of these things that you have in your mind. You're like, oh my god, I need to now do something, and your brain finds the path of least resistance and just says, fuck it. But sometimes this doesn't really matter, right? Sometimes it's like, okay, whatever, have it. Okay, I cheated it, like whatever. But sometimes it does matter. Like you want to exercise in order to keep healthy. It does matter if you do it. It does matter if you consistently try to do it.
Mm-hmm.
it's not like just some random thing. Some of these things absolutely matter. And especially if you're not at a degree, and I think a lot of us are not, except if you're like David Goggins, to have this discipline to absolutely do the thing that you said that you're going to do, you're either going to cheat it or you're going to quit. So you're just going to delete this whole thing and quit. With this feature that you really find this one person or few people who are trusted by you and they keep you accountable, very directly keeping you accountable. So they are accepting a request to keep you accountable in specific habit. It's not like a general thing. It's like, oh, well, I'm checking your status updates. No, you will not be able to get the score and the checking of the habits if that person does not approve it.
Mm-hmm.
Done. So good luck cheating them. And they won't get cheated anymore because they are like, if they, I mean, and hopefully you will find some people who are acting as your best self-interest, and your self-interest is to.
So how again are they going to prove that you did it?
You'll send a photo. For now, that's the case.
Okay.
You send a photo of whatever, like whatever
habit. I
habit.
can still find ways of cheating that.
Of course, you can find a way. But it's not about like having a bulletproof solution. It's about finding a solution that is good enough. This is, I think that you kind of get that this is my motto alongside this conversation, is that you can find a solution that is good enough. And also, what you want to do, this book, Atomic Habit by James Clear, he's also mentioning this same thing. Like, what you want to do if you don't want to watch TV is just like to put the remote like somewhere that you can't reach it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're like, really, James? You think that I'm this much of an idiot to like be able to hide the remote and not? I can still watch TV. Like, sure, you can still watch TV. No one is saying that you can like lock yourself out of watching TV. It's just the fact that you are making it harder for yourself to do it is going to make you less likely to go and watch it. And the fact that you have, for example, accountability partners is going to make it less likely for you to cheat, because like you have to answer to this guy. Is like, okay, I went to go running. It's like, what should you do in order to take a photo? Oh my God, I need to like, oh, you take on you put on the running clothes, you put on your running shoes, you go outside, you put water on your face and you take a photo. Well, just fucking run. That's like too much of an effort in a way to do in order to like prove that you did something. Like, meanwhile, a lot of the times, the only thing that you need to do is to just put on your damn running shoes, and that is enough for you to go on a run. So in a way, this, even faking it, even if you fake it once, even faking it is not necessarily like just the end of the story, because like if you put on the running shoe, maybe you start to say like, oh my God, I'm not even going to cheat, and like I have now all of these clothes, so let me just run. Why should I take a photo like this? Let me just run, and now it will be fine.
That's actually the David Goggins philosophy. It's just that put your fucking shoes on.
Yeah,
that's literally his quote. Just he even says it that like some days he doesn't want to, so he just sort of wrestles with the shoes. Just looks at them. It's like, you can't trick me this time. Oh,
yeah. And I mean, if there is like one badass person in the world, that is like David Goggins, and even he is struggling. Mm-hmm. And he is very open about it. He is open about it in his book, about the fact that he was struggling with it when he was young. And he's still, to this very day, I mean, after that, so many badass things that he has done, he is still open about it. And to have a social media to share these vulnerabilities, to understand that we are all in the same boat, we are experiencing the same things. We get anxious. People are putting up this facade of saying that they are just some tough motherfucker and nothing can't hurt them. That's the old way of thinking. That's the wrong way of sharing. That's the zero-sum game playing. It's feeling like if you act like you are some strong person, if you seem like this kind of thing, then all of a sudden you're better off because other people are doing it. So you have to also do it. But what if we are all vulnerable together and we all say that this is the real me and I want to improve. I want to fucking get better. This is my problem. I have this problem, this problem, this problem. I want to get better. And people are just helping each other. It's not a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. So you can be able to share, you can share your progress, you can stay accountable, and you can keep other people accountable. And then your idea of fun and interacting with other people is still there. So it's not like you're not talking with other people anymore. You're talking, but instead this time you're telling them, oh, well, you didn't do actually your running, so I'm going to disapprove. And then maybe we can have discussions with them about what are your tips in order to do it. Maybe you are running consistently and you can discuss it with some other random person or something like that. Or maybe you can, well, we have other features like tribes and so on. That if there are certain people who are going towards the same goal, say you want to like build up your YouTube channel, and there are a lot of people, a lot of creators that have the same goal, you can kind of have a tribe, and you are like as a cohort, you are going together towards that goal. So this way you can share your progress. This way you can keep yourself like each other accountable, or one another accountable rather, and this is also another feature that is going to help you do it. And the good thing about all of that is that like at the end of the day, when you end up doing all of this, it is for your own benefit. It is for the sake of you, and it is going to improve your life. So it's just not going to be something for ego. It's not going to be something for likes. Not going to be something. Every check-in for every habit that you do over time is going to improve you and only you. And in the way, you also get more social benefits because humans are not necessarily only thinking about themselves. They are also thinking about, you will get happy if you help another person out. This is the happiness. Happiness comes from these kind of sources, not only from you, but also from other people. So if you're feeling that your advice, if you're feeling that the fact that you're keeping someone else accountable is going to help them overcome their social anxiety, overcome their the problem with their health, their weight, whatever that the case may be, or to keep them motivated, keep them disciplined to pursue their goals, you will feel genuinely good that you helped one other person. And this is just like, I don't see any problem. And this is another challenge that me and my co-founders are like constantly thinking about. We don't want to make it something that has negative aspects to it, but that's almost impossible for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we are really, that's why it's taking so long to really think about the design of it, is because we are trying to come up with this idea that not only our app is successful, so that is obviously like normal metrics that everyone wants to hit, like, oh, well, like the engagement, the downloads, the number of times, but at the same time, it's not like addictive and in a bad way, you are just pursuing like clout instead of actually pursuing goals. So we are trying to limit that.
Do you think it's a bad culture that like this improvers exist?
100%.
Really?
100%, yeah.
But is it preferable to the other side, which is like, oh, I gotta be the most, have the sexiest body or most beautiful face or whatever, so I can put it on. Which one's worse?
Well, what do you mean by improver?
Us basically. Just constantly trying to do better in every aspect of life all the time.
No, I think I didn't understand you first time. I don't think that there is anything wrong with trying to improve one person, like oneself. What I initially thought what you're saying is that like these improvers, they are the people who are like kind of just going off rants about, oh my God, I'm like such a Greek god. I'm improving myself, my body, and my mind in every way. And it's like 99% just show off. And that is a problem. that is a problem. I think there is no problem for someone who actually does it. If you do it, then like, as far as I'm concerned, like, all power to you. Like, I don't really care if you do it, then it's fine. Like someone like Rock, like The Rock, who like does it every day. Like, he is a badass motherfucker. He is doing it every day. If he goes on off of a rant about like something, no one is going to say, oh my God, he went on about it again. But there are a lot of fakes and people who are just looking for clouds, and they exist because of social media, because of the incentive. They are incentivized to do that in order to gain traction, in order to get money. So one thing that I always want to do is to stop criticizing people and start criticizing tools more. And in general, like everywhere. Because we are human, we are apes. We are apes. If you're making a tool and if it can be used for bad, we need to rethink the way that we are thinking about tools. Social media right now fucking sucks. You shouldn't say that, oh my God, why are you spreading misinformation? Oh my God, why is it like that? Well, maybe there is a fucking problem with the tool. And it's not like that we had this tool forever. It can't be ever flawed. No, it's like a new thing. So it is really flawed, and it is really flawed, and everyone knows it.
It's kind of that argument that people are spreading misinformation. I made that argument in my video, but I also countered it with the fact that it's, the companies are designing this.
But it's not even about companies. Like, what are companies? Companies are just people. I'm just saying that, of course, companies want to design products that are addictive. And of course, companies have like right now in the system. So that's why a lot of people are saying, like, oh, well, like, capitalism is like that. Like, why there are people? Why are there people who are disagreeing with, for example, with capitalism?
Because they don't understand it.
It's not about the fact that they don't understand it. They are actually thinking to a degree, like, oh, well, human nature is like this. If you incentivize people to do anything to make shareholders happy, to do anything for the benefit of shareholders, then you won't get good results out of those companies. Those companies are going to just be greedy bastards. And there are a lot of cases that those companies are greedy bastards. Like, there are so many different ones. I'm not saying that there is like a better way than capitalism. I don't have like a solution. I'm not saying like become a communist. That's no good. But what I'm saying is, if you have a system in which it incentivizes people to behave in a certain way, you should expect a good percentage of those people to behave in that certain way. Right now with social media, the incentive is that, oh, well, if you like kind of post a photo of your butt, you're going to get more attractions, right? So now if a Instagram quote unquote model posts a photo of her butt every single day, because that generates the most money, increases the number of followers the most, like, of course she will do it. It's like, how many people will it take that they shouldn't do it, unless, like, finally there will be that one person who will do it and will gain all the benefit. So like, these systems are asking for it in a way. Like, they will be exploited by these people. So if we design better systems, if we design better social media, then we can counterbalance this. We can counterbalance the fact that it will kind of be ruined in a way by these. So we can't fault the Instagram model for using Instagram. But she is just being smart.
Is she ruining it?
She's not. I'm not even sure if Instagram is like thinking that, oh, that's ruined. Instagram loves it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but for people, probably that's not a good experience. I'm not saying, I don't know. I'm not using Instagram personally, but I don't know. I don't know if people like to see that, if people don't like to see that, if they prefer if it was something else. I don't know about that. What I know about is that if you're giving out prizes You're increasing the followers. Your system is in a way that if, for example, someone sends, posts something sexually inducive or something like that, and then you then can't go off on a rant and say, oh, well, these are the people who are like destroying this, Same thing that is happening with like this free speech platforms. I mean, this is kind of the same way. Because when you have things that are like completely free speech platforms, there is no rule, you will get the top post to be controversial. You will get a bunch of shitty posts on there. And that's why a lot of people are angry. Oh, well, we don't have free speech. Well, because not only you make a post out there, but also you kind of have algorithms to sort the posts. And controversial posts just get more attention.
Of course, because
if I say this this glass is almost empty, like no one is going to fucking care. Sure. No downvote, no upvote, maybe downvote because you wasted my time by using this bullshit post. But if someone says, oh my God, there's this conspiracy theory and this and that, there are some people who are trying to disprove you. There are some people who are in your camp, and then there is this big fight, and there is like the post just blows up. And until we have these things, of course we are going to have this shit surfacing up in the social media, because there are algorithms and things that are designed. I think maybe the way to go forward for free speech, for example, to continue, could be something that doesn't kind of uses another kind of algorithm to have those posts. Mm-hmm. So why are we giving? It's not like that we are taking the platform out of someone who's like flat earther. It's just the fact that like no one fucking cares. Like no one sees that post necessarily unless they like literally go and search for it. It's not like that you should not give the people the platform to talk, right? It's about the fact that it should kind of resemble real life. In real life, how does free speech work? Like if you go on the street and you talk about something controversial, if it's something that might interest people, if you're talking normal sense, people are going to stand and listen to you. If you're not going to talk normal, if you're saying, oh, Earth is flat, everyone is just going to pass by because they have work to do.
So do you think a way to incentivize better behavior on social media is to basically rank...
to not incentivize being controversial.
So to rank arguments based on how much weight your arguments have?
I don't have a solution. If I did, I would make it. But what I know from real life, and even that is not perfect, what I know from maybe real life 100 years ago, not post-social media or post-technology, is that if someone had a ridiculous idea, it was very difficult for them to get a large following. And that's why we have few religions, for example, out there. There are few religions that stood the test of time.
They're the most powerful. They have the most
exactly
arguments.
Exactly. So in order for an idea to kind of get stuck, in order for an idea to stick, you are, first of all, you can give platform to an idea. You can just like, it's all right, like someone talking in a street. But like, how can I access a large audience? Well, I can shout in the street, but everyone thinks that I'm crazy and they're going to just go away. This is not happening in social media.
You can say the same thing that you would say in the
exactly, and then like everyone that are kind of like the passengers, like the passerbys in the street, they're not like standing there and arguing with you. They're like, okay, fuck this guy. They're just leaving. Versus in social media, if you say the same thing, they start being keyboard warriors of their own now. Yeah. So that's first. The second thing is, okay, how can you have a large audience? Say that you want to have a TED Talk. Say you want to have a conference. Whatever that case is. Well, you have to have some sort of degree, some sort of background, some sort of knowledge in order for you to be invited, in order to talk where there are other people who are interested in order to hearing that are present. So you are going to talk to them. And maybe there you will have debates, and maybe there you will have arguments and so on. But unless you are not kind of passing those elementary stages, you cannot just have this platform. One of the things that is happening in social media, since every tweet is like equal to the tweet downstairs, yeah, sure, there are like number of follows, but some dude can just like write up a tweet and just sends it, and like all of a sudden, like if like there is some controversy or some traction, it's going to just blow up. I remember like years ago there was this girl. There was this controversy on Twitter. There was this girl who like wore a Chinese dress for her prom, or I think it was just like and she thought this is just a beautiful dress. I'm going to wear it. Some Asian dude says that my culture is not your fucking prom dress.
You know the funny thing about that dress is not even Han Chinese. It's some other
whatever the case is. Some dude. That dude is literally the guy who catcalls people in the street. Like, it's not an important dude, you know? It's just a dude. It's just like a dude that happened to be Asian. That argument, like, got retweeted. It got liked a lot. People started to be in two different camps. Cultural appropriation is bad versus what the fuck is just a prom dress. So that one guy could just, like, started a fire of different arguments on, like, some random tweet. That's not happening in real world. If you have an understanding about like some dress, you don't give a fuck.
But there is a little bit of a twisted beauty to it. That everyone on the internet, because you don't see any faces, you don't see any degrees, everyone has the same power to argue. And then we process through these ideas really quickly. And
but everyone has the power to argue.
That's fucking
in real world.
But
it's not about danger. It's about the fact that in real world, also everyone has the power to argue. It's like, why someone, say some dude like Ben Shapiro, right? Like, why is he the face of like arguments and debates in different places?
And mainly he's kind of become the face of the right.
Exactly.
Which is not
right.
He's not necessarily good.
He's not necessarily good. I'm not like agreeing with any like most of the things that he says, right? What I'm saying is, I think that he deserves it to be that level because he fucking tried.
Yeah, he grinded it out.
He is a normal person. At the end of the day, he's not like a special person who was born in a special family.
No, he's
just a dude.
16.
He's just a dude who likes to debate and who has a sense of humor, has a certain wit, debated his fucking whole life, and has certain arguments and grinds.
And
like that's it.
Peterson. Like, Peterson is, I find him much more credible than.
Of course, yes, I agree. And the same thing there. And the same thing there. And the same for people from the left. I mean, the thing that they argue, the things that they argue about, and I'm specifically talking about Shapiro because I don't agree with them. So it's like a good person to talk about because it's like, okay, it's just some dude that I don't agree with, but at the same time I don't agree with him. I feel like, okay, he has the power to debate and he has a large following, and that's okay. And if someone wants to be that person who is arguing about anything, then go ahead and be that person. Make a large following. If you have a large enough following, it doesn't matter. I mean, to a degree, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. If a lot of people agree with you, does it? Like, maybe something is inherently wrong. It's just wrong in your brain. But like, if a lot of people are agreeing with it, it's like, who are you to judge? So the problem with social media is that it gives that power just for free, without any grind, without anything. So people don't know, first of all, the consequences. And people don't face the consequences. Because a guy on Twitter just has a handle with like an anime girl or whatever, and some random thing, and it's very anonymized.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't face any consequences. So any backlash, I mean, if your tweet gets 1 like and everyone just fucking hates on it, like it doesn't matter. Worst case scenario, you delete the fucking tweet or you make another account. Like who cares? You can't make another account from real life. So you are damn careful about what you say. And this is some consequence that doesn't exist in social media. And the other thing that is bad about the current way the social media works is that it boxes you in. Your feed is the kind of stuff that you follow and the kind of stuff that you visit right now with AI and all of that. So it is the kind of stuff that you consume and that you most likely agree with. And whatever you like is going to kind of make a feedback loop for Twitter or whatever other social media to then show you similar posts to what you liked. Simple algorithm. But this feedback loop is very dangerous if you're living in a, say, like conspiracy theory hell. Like if you're in that, then say you're on YouTube and you watch a bunch of conspiracy theory shit, and then all of a sudden, all of your recommended videos are going to be conspiracy theory shit, and it's never going to stop because you are going to consume them again and again and again. They're going to be controversial and they're going to be conspiracy theories, and you are going to go down this rabbit hole of just consuming harsher and harsher ones.
And then in the long term, that just forms your entire mindset.
Exactly.
Especially for like someone like me who basically grew up on YouTube. I spent all my teenage years on YouTube.
So the fact that you are consuming YouTube and you have some, like YouTube has to have like a refresh button, like a randomizer button that shows you the different side, that shows you the different side of the argument. Right now, even if you search the search results that are about the same thing, two accounts, one left wing, one right wing, if they search about the same thing, like about the same topic, say about like a school shooting, like whatever the topic is, the right wing guy is going to have like arguments pro guns, and the left wing guy is going, like the videos, even if you search about the same term. And I'm not even talking about the recommended, I'm talking about the search function. You're still going to see first the left wing is going to be against guns and the right wing is going to be pro guns. And this is what's going to happen. There was this project that would show you could select a character, and this is an AI look like pretending to be different kind of humans. Conspiracy theorists, left wing, right wing, things like that. And you can go to this website and then see how the YouTube homepage of this AI looks. So this gives you an understanding of like what other people are consuming. And so what I do is that I'm using my YouTube, and of course I like to have recommendation on, because like a lot of the things that YouTube does recommend me are actually the ones that are interesting to me. But sometimes I like just look at 1 or 2 videos and it's already like thinking that, oh my God, I want to be able to do a couple of stuff. Where were we? We're talking about the fact that YouTube, for example, when you are a specific kind of person, it will show you specific kind of feed, right? And that is dangerous because you will reinforce the beliefs that the beliefs that you already had.
And that seems to be what we're looking for as well. Like I physically feel it when my ideas are challenged. Like I can feel it in my stomach, I can feel it in my head, I can feel it in my arm, like hands.
So this is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. When
your ideas are challenged, you can seek comfort in those people who have the same ideas as you. And this is absolutely crazy. I mean, this is what happened, for example, with Wall Street bets, right? To a degree. Like people started downvoting anyone who talked sense to other people and started upvoting anything else. So they had this like very much herd mentality. Anyone who spoke against this was downvoted to hell. So you couldn't see anyone who was against it. So, and what would you see is that this front, that everyone is pro this, everyone wants to do this, everyone is holding, no one is selling, etc. If someone was showing, oh, I just sold 200, they would just get downvoted. So it's like there is no way for you to see the reality in this kind of structure when you have things like when you have things that kind of sort them based on a specific thing, sort them based on how many upvotes it has, how many how much controversial it is. Reddit has like all of these things, right? Well, at least Reddit will give you the option to choose between, like, maybe you can choose based on time, you can choose new, or you can choose controversial like yourself, or you can choose hot.
Have you seen improvethenews.com?
No.
It was made by Max Tegmark. You know Max Tegmark, the sort of one of the founding members of OpenAI.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote a really cool book, Life 3.0. Should read. Basically, it has a bunch of filters where you can say, okay, I want a right-wing article. It's just news. It's not like social media posts, but for now. So it's right-wing, left-wing, pro-establishment, against establishment, and has like 10 different filters that you can filter your news through. And it's insane how the headlines vary and how the content varies. It's just, how the fuck is one reality like taken so many different ways?
Well, I mean, of course, because it's been taken in by different individuals with different sets of ideas. And if we continue like having this herd mentality, I'm not saying that in real world we don't have this herd mentality and we don't groupthink and we don't go to our group in order to reinforce and verify our own ideas and beliefs. So of course we are reinforcing our beliefs, but it's much less than how it would be with social media. With the advent of social media, even if you're a fucking Nazi in a place where there is no Nazi, you can find some Nazis some other places in the world, which is very dangerous. Because, I mean, sure, maybe there's like some extreme idea that you might have, and I mean, one extremist in a city is like, okay, whatever. But like many extremists in a city, that's like very dangerous. Now, social media is bringing those extremists from like many cities together to make this like hold this platform. So that's kind of the dangers there. The danger is this reinforcement of your ideas, the fact that no one is daring to get their ideas challenged. No one is, and everyone is actually seeking the verification out of social media. So that's very dangerous. And I think that the way forward for social media would be to invent something that counterbalances this. Something that doesn't have only this, something that has both, something that shows both sides of the argument, something that keeps people grounded, and do so in a way that is not boring. A social media that just shows everything that every single person says time-based is not interesting. Something that's completely random maybe is not interesting. Like, just show me 10 completely random tweets. That's probably not interesting for you. So the challenge here, like, probably random is like some sort of like game theory optimal thing you can do here, right? Like, how can you get a good taste of everyone's idea? Just show me 10 random ideas. But something might be game theory optimal. It's like on the Nash equilibrium of what is optimal for people to consume, but might not be good in terms of like attractiveness and people liking to be on it and to even make these stuff. And especially if it's anonymous, then soon it's going to be filled up with junk. And a lot of people tried making like anonymous things, and a lot of people failed. And to a degree, the reason that Twitter didn't fail And at least it's still because like a lot of the content is the blue tick verified content people consume. If it was like say Reddit or 4chan, as you know, and Reddit has like strict moderators and rules and so on in different subreddits. There are some subreddits that are fucked up, but in most like mainstream subreddits, the rules are damn extreme. They're really harsh. So they are really enforcing those rules. If it wasn't for it, it would be a weird place. Weirder than it currently is.
Let me change this topic slightly, but to this. Do you think we can moderate humanity itself in the same way we moderate social media? Let me explain the context. I feel like humanity is lacking a greater purpose. Like, we live in a very weird time. We've had social media, let's say peak of it, it started in like the past 10 years or so. And we are also, over the next 3, 4, 5 decades, we're gonna be doing a lot of shit that will either lead to our demise completely as a civilization, or we will prosper for a little bit longer.
Okay? All right.
How do we fucking convince people to stop being idiots and actually work towards that greater goal?
Well, I think that you shouldn't be convincing people. And this is going kind of back to my first argument. I think you should design a system that incentivizes people to work towards that. And that's just the way it works. So people are just like, humanity as a whole, they're just like a bunch of selfish people. Everyone is trying to make their own buck, and they're trying to live a comfortable life and have a family and so on. Everyone wants to have their ends meet and to have a comfortable life, right? So that's kind of the minimum things that humans need. And then there are other things like, okay, maybe people want to have some luxury in their lives, and maybe some don't. Maybe some want to be vegan, maybe some don't, right? Like there are different kinds of people. Of course, they have different values. But if we have a set of rules and a system in which incentivizes people to work towards that goal, then we don't need to control them. They are going to. There is always going to be that like few people who are like working against the system, and they're like trying to spread like anarchism and like whatever. But what is most prevalent, what is going to be most prevalent, is that people are going to try to work towards that, if that's going to benefit them. Now, the reason that, for example, capitalism works to a degree is because it literally says, hey buddy, if you have an invention that people like and will buy and it's so cool that people are willing to pay you their hard fucking earned money, then you will succeed. You will get a lot of money. So people are like, why are you making this fucking podcast? Because people are going to listen to it. Okay.
Hopefully.
If people are going to listen to it, why are you trying to use this certain equipment? And why are you wasting your time talking? And why are you doing this kind of things? Well, because people are going to like it. Like, why? Well, because I want to create good content. But like, if you get to the bottom of it, if it has some financial incentives down the line, at least, if you make good content, if you make good entertainment under this capitalism thing, you will get some sort of benefit out of it. So that's cool. Now, there are people who are doing things without any financial benefits. There are like nuns who devote their lives to what they believe in.
But that's still a selfish goal.
It's still. I think it still is because they are feeling as though it's going to improve their chances, for example, in another life, or whatever that the case is. But maybe I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, well, maybe there are people who have this idea, right? Maybe there are people like the doctor who goes to Africa to serve people there, like whatever. Maybe you can argue, oh well, he is also doing it in order to satisfy his ego of helping people. Whatever the case is, I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt and say, well, maybe they are just pure good humans. Everyone should be like them. They are amazing, and they are amazing. Some of these people are amazing, not to take anything from it. And I'm going to even go and say, well, they don't even have any incentive. They don't have any personal incentive. But how many are these people? How many? Are there like 100,000 in this whole world that are like this? So usually you can't have a system that just is going to trust into the goodness of the humanity for this to work. You have to design a system where people are incentivized to do good and to work towards the future. That's why you have like stuff like, tax reduction on CO2 and stuff like that. And like, when you reduce your CO2 consumption, then you will pay your reduced tax. Like, why is that the case? Because no fucking company is going to invest extra money in order to do research and development in order to reduce their carbon emission. Unless there is a financial incentive down the line that, maybe it's a one-time payment, we will pay this much, but then if we reduce it, we will get this much, we will have this much less in taxes that we need to pay, and therefore we are going to have it better off in the long run. So there should be some sort of incentive, and this should be this incentive for all people. And you, as an individual, you have to understand that, well, at least in the current system of democracy, you have to vote for people who are willing to make these incentives. For example, for companies. For someone who is willing to put a tax on CO2. And not for someone who is just trying to, for example, shut down everything. They're going to automatically shut down if they're paying too much in taxes. They're automatically going to do better. They're automatically going to make things better if they have incentive to do it. And people are just in general going to do in their best self-interest. There are some psychos who are not going to even act in their own self-interest. There are some people who, quote unquote, want to just watch the world burn.
Yeah.
But they are also a very small minority. It's just the same as there are people who want to devote their lives into helping others and improving. There are also minority. Most people, I believe, are just acting out of self-interest. And since they are acting out of self-interest, it's best to provide them with a system that at least uses that self-interest in a good way. So I don't have the exact answer to it, but you can think about like some certain solutions. So if you want to have a certain goal, then you would just put on some maybe financial incentive in order to have that certain goal, right? And it rarely is the case that you should just like block it completely. Because blocking it completely is also not good. So yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm too exhausted to. How was it? How was it?
It was good. It was good. Good talk. I like it without the cams.
You prefer it without a camera?
Yeah, and I think that most people are not going to necessarily watch it, as you said, and I think it's just a more comfortable, just posture and everything, when you know that you're not being recorded.
I mainly prefer the camera because of discovery. Like, I basically only find out about podcasts on YouTube, and then if I really, really like it, I'll listen to it. Then I will
follow. Yeah, I agree.
So,
well, but probably clips are better.
Yeah.
Because no one is going to watch a 3-hour podcast on YouTube anyways.
We got, I think, almost 4 hours in the clock. 3.5 hours.
It's good enough.
Pretty good. All right. Where can people find you? If
they can contact me at Hossein@identi.app if they have any business inquiry or any questions. So
cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
For doing this. All right. Bye, folks. See you next time.